Yeah, thank you, madam, for the formal introduction. So I'm really sorry to all of you if I've kept you waiting for probably 5 minutes. I had some confusion. The video is coming on the laptop, but the audio is coming on the phone. So I think we are good for the presentation anyway. So when ma'am told me to talk about soilless farming and so on, I wanted to talk about something that was really worrying me, right? The current scenario in which the soilless farming industry is evolving in India. So I thought it would be very relevant to talk about that. So that's why I came out with the topic, current Indian perspective. So just to give you a brief about myself, I've been designing and implementing hydroponic and aeroponic vertical farms since 2013, and I've completed around 160 assignments. So I work in the Middle East, across India, and also in some of these Southeast Asian countries. So overall, I've completed 160 assignments. Our company is called Pennysworth Techno Farms Private Limited. We are located in Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu, and we go by the brand name Sure Group, right? And in terms of our expertise, we design and implement both greenhouses and predominantly we call it polyhouses, but all of them are called anyway greenhouses. And we have the capability to design climate control systems in any diverse conditions. And right from normal density to ultra high density, we know how to design and implement vertical farming systems. And we also do our own hardware and software in terms of IoT enabled automation for hydroponics and aeroponics. We also do our own nutrition and plant care. That's apart from the what do you call it? Project implementation part, right? The physical part. We also take care of the plants. Okay, so that is about myself, and we are a team of 9 engineers, right? So each of us specialize in one or other of these verticals. Okay, so that's my background. So let us start like this. I just let us imagine that somebody is walking into my office. Let us call him Mr. Sing Song, right? Let us say he's coming from Chennai, right? And very often, the response I get when I ask them what you want to grow is they want to grow lettuce. Let us assume that he wants to implement a farm size of 4,000 square feet, which is fair enough. For a vertical farm, it is good enough. 4,000 square feet is good enough. And he wants to do the A type vertical system, right? Which is probably the most common system implemented. He wants to do it on the ground. A 4,000 square feet farm could be also done on a, what do you call it, terrace. Anyway, in this case, let us assume that he's wanting to do it on the ground, right? And we do not implement vertical farming structures without a housing. So he needs a poly house. And common knowledge from Google or whatever, right? He says that he wants to implement a fan and pad cooling system, right? So I hope that the brief specifications on your screen look okay, right? Nothing wrong with Mr. Sing Song wanting to grow lettuce in Chennai, right? Nothing wrong about the size, nothing wrong about the proven A-type vertical design, right? Nothing wrong in doing it on the ground. And he wants to use a polyhouse and a fan and pad cooling system, right? We say this is not possible, right? So start thinking, right? Why is this so, right? If somebody comes to me like this, I say I cannot do the project, right? Let us go to the next slide. Right. Let us call this client Mr. Jingle Bell. Okay. So let us assume that he's coming from Jaipur, Rajasthan. Okay. So very similar to Mr. Sing Song, this gentleman also wants to grow lettuce. He also wants to grow on the same size, 4,000 square feet. He wants to grow A-type vertical. Again, good, right? He also wants to do it on the ground. He would also invest in a polyhouse, and he also wants a fan and pad cooling system, right? We say enthusiastically that it is possible, right? Again, my question is why? right? I'll briefly, I'll go back to the previous slide also, right? Just for you to have a look. What difference can you find between the first slide and the second slide other than our response? Right? I would say only thing is the location. Otherwise, it's absolutely the same. But for the gentleman who comes from Chennai, I say it is not possible. But for the gentleman who comes from Jaipur, I say it is very much possible. Right? You can unmute and give your response also. If any one of you attending the meeting, right, has an answer as to why I say the same project is possible in Jaipur and not possible in Chennai. Any responses?
No, Mr. Nagendhiran.
Okay. Anyway, I'll not wait again. Let me go to this. So this is a climate graph for Mr. Singh Song, right? I've told you that he comes from Chennai, right? So if you observe the graph on top, it shows the minimum, maximum, and average temperature variation in Chennai for 1 year. Okay, it starts from July of 2022 and goes up to July of 2023. So it shows around 13 months of data, right? And if you observe the temperature maximum, it goes to around 37 degrees, right? And minimum, let us say, it goes to around 22, 23 degrees of 22, 23 degrees Celsius, right? So that is the temperature variation graph for 1 year in Chennai, right? Or probably we can take it as last year. This is very similar, okay? There may be some variations, but year after year, it is almost similar, right? And you also look at the graph below, right? It shows the average cloud and humidity percentage, right? I'm not bothered about the cloud, right? I'm bothered about the black bars, okay? So if you look at the black bars, the least probably it occurs in June, right? The least tall black bar occurs in June, right? And it's also around, shall we say it is around 60%, right? The humidity graph, right? It I think you can see the marking 75%. The 50% and 25% are not that visible, but I think you can make out from the figure, right? So you have at least 60% to be the least humidity that can be seen in Chennai, right? Now, going back to the top temperature graph, right? You see that the peak temperature occurs in Chennai in May, right? Which is, let us say, around 37 degrees, right? And in the corresponding period, right, you have almost 70% of humidity and you have 60% and probably 65% somewhere there, right? So this issue, right, will simply render a fan and pad cooling system ineffective, right? And if a client, how much ever he invests in a project in Chennai, if he invests in a fan and pad cooling system, the system is simply not going to work. But the shocking reality is that there are so many vendors who simply go and implement a fan and pad cooling system in a place like Chennai, and the project simply bombs, right? Since nobody gives any assurance on the yield and so on, nobody is caught, right? The client has to pay for the infrastructure, and that is that, right? Beyond that, he cannot claim anything from the service provider. So this is the scenario for Mr. Singh Song. So this is the reason why I have refused, right? Let us look at Mr. Jingle Bell's situation, right? Let us say this is from Jaipur, right? Very similarly, right, in Jaipur also, since in India we have a relatively common up and down in the temperature with respect to time, right? So in May again, they have the peak. They almost have the peak in May, right? And here the temperature, here the data shows that it is around 42. It could even go to 45 and so on, right? And look at the corresponding humidity at that time, right? It is only 27. Right. So what happens is your fan and pad cooling system is going to be almost as efficient as a compressor based air conditioner. right? It can really cool your polyhouse down very well, right? So that is the only reason why we have said yes to Jaipur. In fact, we already have a project running in Jaipur, growing strawberries, and having a fan and pad cooling system, right? So this is a very important thing. But what I find is universally in India, people go for implementing the fan and pad system immaterial of where the location of the project is, without even realizing that the whole project is going to bomb, right? You may have some leaves coming out, you may have some fruiting, but finally whatever you invest, you need to get the returns from the project, right? So this is a very important issue, right? So this is similar in again, Kolkata is also similar, right? We did a 3000 square feet project in Jaipur. We also did a 3000 square feet project in Kolkata. Ditto same project, but in Kolkata we went for a compressor based air conditioning, whereas in Jaipur we went for a fan and pad cooling system. Both will be equally efficient, but in Kolkata, even though the fan and pad cooling system may cost a little bit less, I mean significantly less, you will not be able to make it work in Kolkata because of the humidity like in Chennai, right? So most of these farms, right, we see miserably fail, right? There are a lot of videos on Google, there are a lot of claims on Google, right? People but a farm is not about just showing a set of plants to be green, right? It is all about how much you invest into the farm, and are you able to really get sufficient returns on the farm such that you're able to sustain and run it, and also have a decent profit from it, right? So the very important thing that is being missed, as I told you, in India is we are not going for climate appropriate infrastructure in most of the places. People have a standard design, they do not know anything about climate applicability, and they simply go and implement the systems, right? So now what we would really look at is these are the types of climate that you encounter in India, right? So I've listed out as this: hot, moderate, and cool, right? And within that hot, you have dry. I mean, within those three, you have both the dry and the humid environments, right? So the most important thing is the dry or humid environment. And there, what I've done is I've highlighted in blue the appropriate cooling system that will work in that place. So as I told you, you can observe that wherever I've called it humid, right, immaterial of whether it is hot or moderate, I mean both hot and moderate, I've gone for a fog and I've gone for a fan and pad cooling system, right? Sorry, I've gone for a compressor based cooling system when it is humid. And when it is moderate, what I've done is I can live with a fog and fan based evaporative cooling system, right? So this reduces the cost a little bit, a shade, right? And when I have dry conditions, right, I go for the fan and pad based cooling system in both the dry conditions, both for hot and the moderate, right? And if you observe both the cool systems, I mean the cool environments, both for the dry and the humid, I've gone for the naturally ventilated system, right? Now this is fine, whatever I've listed it out is fine. Let us look at what is the significance, right? Now let us say a person wants to grow strawberries in Coimbatore, right? So in Coimbatore, you can look at temperature going up to around 35 degrees in summer, and the low of around 18 degrees. The lowest we can get in winter is 18 degrees. So we are completely safe. We are not worried about the low temperatures. We are only worried about the high temperatures. Let us say we are having 35 degrees as the maximum. So this kind of a climate, very similar to Pune, I would say. This kind of a climate, I would classify it as moderate, right? And here we do not have any major water bodies nearby. So we will also not have very high humid conditions. So we will classify this as moderate and dry, right? So in this kind of a condition, let us say I want to grow strawberry, I will have to invest in a fan and pad cooling system for my polyhouse, right? So let us say it is a 1000 square meter polyhouse. right? Where probably I will have around 12 hammer fans running, and each one will be consuming around 1200 watts, right? So that would easily take your wattage to around 14,000 watts of power consumed continuously. Probably the fans will be running for around 12 to 13 hours in a day, in order to keep it to the ideal temperature of around 24 to 26 degrees in the polyhouse for growing your strawberries, right? So what happens is, whenever you go for a cooling system, immaterial of whether it is a compressor based system or a fan and pad based evaporative cooling system, these are all energy guzzlers, right? A compressor based system is all the more energy guzzling. A fan and pad system does not drop far behind. Just imagine, right? Let us say it is working for a 14,000 watt fan and pad system is working for 12 hours a day, 365 days a year, right? And try to calculate the energy that you have consumed, and your project is definitely not green if you're consuming so much of electricity to grow your plants, right? Your project is definitely not green, right? Here you have an advantage, right? Let us say the same strawberry is grown in Uti, right? You might say that the strawberries are already grown in Uti, right? But what I'm talking about is, let us cultivate the same strawberries vertically in Uti, right? There you do not have to invest in either a fan and pad system or a compressor based system, right? A naturally ventilated polyhouse will work, and all the power that you will consume is only for your irrigation, and no other subsystem will consume any extra power, right? So that technically makes your project green. And even though you might say that I'm profitable, right? I have a fan and pad running, fan and pad system running, I am ready to pay for the electricity. All said and done, right? Your project is not green. You're not doing any good for your country. You may sit on some profit, but your profit is definitely going to be less than what you do in the Nilgiris, right? Even beyond your logistics, right? And the project is not a project which is advisable for a country like India, where we need to become more and more conscious about our environment, right? So this probably none of us discuss about all these things. All that we look at is, we look at capital expenditure, we look at the operational expenditure. We do not bother about what the system is doing. And if we right. So this the difference between these systems. I'll also give you one more example. We just completed another. I think it was a 2,700 square feet system in Dubai. Right. So again, for some of you who know the Dubai climate, right, you know that it is humid as well as hot in summer, right? Because of its access to the sea. So there the temperature could hit 50 also, though officially they may not announce 50, right? The temperature could hit 50 and above, right? So there is no possibility of implementing a polyhouse itself. So what we've done is, we've gone for implementing a insulated warehouse, and with puff insulation, and inside, for a 2,700 square feet warehouse, we have implemented 42 tons of air conditioning, right? And inside we have gone for a ultra high density vertical planting implementation. So when we say it is ultra high density, we go for the stacked plane model, one table above the other, right? That is called the stacked plane model, as compared to the A type model. So as compared to the A type model can be called high density, right? And it can be built to very high density also. But when you go with the stacked plane model, it is ultra high density, right? When I talk about ultra high density, in that 2,700 square feet, we gave them 56,000 planting slots. So if you take lettuce as an example, or strawberry as an example, such kind of a small plant, you can grow 56,000 plants parallelly in that system at any point of time, right? So that is what we call as ultra high density. Again, the other issue about implementing ultra high density is that the system cannot work with natural light. So whenever we go with a compressor based system, in order to justify the cost the OPEX as well as CAPEX involved in running the compressor-based system, we go for ultra-high density. When we go for ultra-high density, we cannot work with natural light. We definitely require supplementary lighting. So when we go with supplementary LED lighting, right, we in that project of 2,700 square feet, we have implemented 32,000 watts of lighting, right? And I would say in Dubai, it is completely justified. It is completely justified. But in Indian scenario, it is definitely not justified, because here you have alternate ways of producing it. You need not really stick to ultra high density production and guzzle up so much energy. But in Dubai, considering the import costs and so on and so forth, if you are able to produce your premium strawberries then and there with that air conditioning and the grow lighting, they are good. Particularly after the pandemic and so on, even the government is so eager to become indigenous in their food production in countries like the Middle East or the MENA region. So there it is completely justified. But in India, if you go for, I gave you a rough calculation for the fan and pad based evaporative cooling system. That itself was very heavy, right? It was guzzling huge energy. Just imagine, just for a 2,700 square feet farm, implementing 42 tons of air conditioning, right? It is absolutely not green at all, and it is something that we would we'll be doing injustice to a country like India, where we absolutely do not need such kind of a system. We have done such systems. I think I've done one in Kolkata, one in Lucknow. Right, those are the only two ultra high density systems that we've done in India. But left to me, I would not advise going for such a system. Right. So. As I told you, I classify it as expensive and very expensive. So I call this compressor-based cooling very expensive, and the fan and pad cooling as expensive. So both the expensive and the very expensive systems are not environment friendly at all, and they are also very expensive to run. And second thing, as I told you, expensive system go with very high density, and very expensive systems go with ultra. It is not that they go with; they require ultra high density plantation. Otherwise, you will not break even with such kind of a system, right? And the additional problem, as I told you, is in ultra high density system. Even though I told you in Dubai that we implemented only 30,000 watts, right? I would say 30,000 is a shortfall only, right? And if required, we might have to supplement more wattage of lighting. Technically, right, one lettuce plant requires 2 watts of LED lighting for 18 hours. Compared to sunlight is required only for 6 hours a day, right? Your lettuce plant will be completely healthy, right? Even if it misses sunlight for a few days, 6 hours of sunlight almost consistently will give you an excellent lettuce crop, right? But if you want to go with artificial lighting for lettuce, right, you will require at least 2 watts of LED lighting, right, for to be run for 18 hours a day, right? So look at the calculation. If you just have 5,000 plants, right, technically you will be requiring 10,000 watts of lighting to be implemented, and just imagine the energy that you will be consuming, right? So these are some of the observations, right? And let us compare or relate the crop and the climate control, right? So generally in India, whenever somebody considers doing a hydroponic or an aeroponic vertical farming project, right, they consider only the exotic crops, right? They do not consider the regional crops. They think that it is not worth it at all, right? But what do you call it? What do you call it? Regional crops, from the studies that we have done, right, in most cases are more profitable than the exotic crops that are more commonly associated with hydroponics, right? And the huge advantage is that let us say you are growing spinach, right? There are varieties of spinach that have been developed by our agricultural universities, which can grow in the normally moderate climate regions that you have, right? I would classify Chennai as moderate. I would classify Kolkata as moderate. No issues about the humidity, right? I will classify Coimbatore, Pune, right? All these, including Mumbai, right? All these are moderate climates only, right? They do not go to very extreme temperatures, right? You can comfortably grow certain strains of spinach without implementing any climate control. So you just need the vertical structure, and you just need the polyhouse and a very properly designed, naturally ventilated polyhouse, right? You're good, right? You have a very good working automated hydroponic project on hand. You do not invest much, right? It is good. But most of the people who step into my office, they do not look at it that way, right? They either want to grow strawberries, they either want to grow lettuce, right? Or some exotic crop. They talk about blueberries, all sorts of things, right? Nobody talks about our regional crops at all, right? But most of the most important thing is that thinking that these exotic crops are more profitable is, I would say, is a myth, right? In most cases, it is a myth, right? And what you need to understand is, when you work with regional crops and you also work with the exotic crops, let us consider a lettuce versus amaranth leaf comparison, right? Amaranth leaf in the market, it comfortably sells for 40 to 45 rupees a kilogram, right? And your lettuce, right, very often it is pitched very high on Google, right? I know the rock bottom market price, right? I mean, or ground real market price, right? So it can go from 60 rupees to a maximum of 120 rupees, right? You will not be able, as a farmer, you will not be able to sell your lettuce beyond that, right? In your store, it may be far higher. The retailer may be even selling it for 300 rupees or 500 rupees. No issues at all. But as a farmer, you are not getting anything above 120 rupees. But compare it, your lettuce, the best produced lettuce, right? Probably you will touch an average of around 200, 190 to 200 grams, right? An exception would be 250 grams, but definitely in a farm, let us say of 10,000 plants or 1 lakh plants, you're not getting an average of 250 grams. That is for sure, right? If you're a very good farmer, if you're very fluent, you'll be achieving something between 190 and 200 grams average produce of a lettuce, right? And when you consider that, you will be using 5 slots in your farm, right, to produce 1 kg of lettuce, right, which sells for 120 rupees, right? But within 2 slots, right, your amaranth leaf will produce 1 kilogram in the same period, right? You'll be getting within 2 slots, right? Considering 40 rupees, you earn 80 rupees, right, with 2 slots, whereas you earn 120 rupees with 5 slots. Have you heard anybody comparing this like this at all, right? We simply think that the exotic crops are better because the per kilogram rate of the exotic crops looks high in the market, right? That is one very important thing. A quarter acre of tomato project, right, can give you 60 tons of tomatoes. Forget about the big prices that we saw lately, right? I am looking at a very, very modest price of 20 rupees per kg, right? A simple low cost tomato farm at quarter acre can easily deliver 60 tons of tomatoes per annum, right? And just imagine how profitable that will be. But most people shy away from such kind of projects. Another very important thing is the marketing risk, right? So you, other than the metros like Bangalore, Mumbai, and so on, and Delhi, right? You will not find wholesale buyers for crops like lettuce or broccoli and so on, right? But even in small cities, right, like Coimbatore or Trichy or Pune or wherever, right, or any town, right, you will find wholesale buyers for the regional crops, right? It may be cauliflower, it may be tomatoes, it may be turmeric, right? Whatever regional crop you grow, from your side, the marketing risk is zero. You need not run from pillar to post to sell your produce, right? And very often nowadays people are pitching buyback guarantees, right? But I feel that that is going to be a huge scam, because the vegetable prices can fluctuate largely, right? And if somebody gives you a price assurance and a buyback assurance, it is a huge question mark whether they will be able to maintain it in the long run. I feel that if you're doing the exotics, very quickly you might be left with a situation where you'll have to market it yourself, right? So that is about the crop and the climate control, right? And what do you call it? This industry, I would say that the mindset itself right now is at its infancy, right? It has not matured at all. It has not reached the common man at all, right? So prices are very high. I think nowadays easily a quarter acre NFT arrangement, a vertical NFT arrangement is pitched up to 1.4 crores and so on, right? Which is beyond the reach of the common man. But what we need to tap is the real power of vertical farms, right? Even a 1,000 square feet farm, a simple 1,000 square feet vertical farm without climate control is easily viable by a common housewife also, right? And just imagine, right, n number of farms, n number of such farms can be clubbed together and they can form a mega farm, right? I think all of our states have something called women's self-help groups, right? They go in different names in different states. But just imagine there's a women's self-help group of 30 members, and each of these 30 members have 1,000 square feet of vertical farm, and they club the produce all together, right? Probably another company can professionally manage all these farms and partner with them in order to ensure that the farm runs consistently, right? Just imagine such a model. That is the model with which or that is the model which is most suitable to India, right? Now there's a lot of hawks going, right? More than 90% of the farms implemented are not viable, right? People are initially enthusiastic, but they run it for 2 to 3 years and they find that they are not breaking even, and finally they shut down, right? This is the real ground picture, right? I am in the field. I am seeing so many farms. Most of the farms are being shut down because of the wrong approach, because of consultants not advising the clients properly. So that's the seventh point, right? I've written as future evolution will be many micro vertical farms combining to form a professionally managed mega farm, right? And again, for such people, right, common crops needs to be produced, and we are exporters, so not a problem, right? You really need not worry, right? If India is producing so much of tomato, there is definitely space for more tomatoes. If India is producing, India is the leader in producing turmeric, there is space for more turmeric because there is so much demand in the international market. So I would not discredit our regional crops in any way. And again, even if you look at the Indian greens, right, they are highly nutritious and they need not really be marketed as greens itself. Why I am talking about this is, see, the regional greens, right, their shelf life is very limited. Probably you can hold it for a day, right? Beyond that you will not be able to sell it. So what happens is they become unsuitable candidates for export. But now what happens is people have started powdering it, they have started dehydrating it, they have started powdering it, right? I have one of my clients from Tirupur in Tamil Nadu, right? He is actually making greens powder, and this greens powder is made for different applications. One version of it he gives for mixing with rice, adding a little bit of oil and consuming it. One variety is giving tea, right? You can make tea from the powder, right? Another variety he's giving is used for mixing with dosa and idli batter and so on. So it is about how you present it. So still, these are commodities which can be exported also. So our regional stuff has huge potential, but unfortunately that is not being properly linked with the hydroponic market in India. Madam, am I okay? I think I'm overshooting on the time.
How many slides are left?
Probably a few more. I might take 10 minutes maximum.
How much? 10 minutes?
Yeah, max 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Shall we
Yeah.
go on?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, yeah. So, so this is what I envision. No, I look at most of the middle class housewives, right, having their own farm, right, and they start producing something commercially, right. Just imagine how many households India has, and if so many vertical farms are present in India. See, these are things being very actively implemented by governments like Singapore, Middle East, and so on. There, it is a necessity for them, but here again this can be done on a huge scale. China is the top producer of vegetables in the world, and if we go with this kind of a model and adopt hydroponics in this style, right, India can easily beat India can easily beat China in agricultural produce as well, right, and we will be top in all the agricultural produce exports, because so many countries are completely import dependent for their food stuff. I hope anybody who's listening in and planning to do hydroponics, you understand the point that I'm trying to make, right? And the other very interesting thing, and where people are failing, whom I meet, is that I've titled the slide as driving and marketing. Very often, right, if we drive a car, each of us think that our driving practices are the best, right? And very often we will get shouted upon because the other driver thinks that our driving practices are wrong and his is right. So this is very common in people who walk into my office and start discussing about a hydroponic project. They take marketing for granted, right? They think that they can market the produce, right? 90% of the 9 out of 10 people who walk into my office believe that they can easily market their produce, which is not a reality. Again, you have to go into the market, explore it, then you'll understand. I'll give you a small example, right? One of my clients from Chennai, right, he actually sells through a chain called Kovai Paramadir, right? This is a departmental store chain which operates across India, I mean across Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. I think they have something like 75 plus stores across this region, right? And he supplies to one outlet, right, in Anna Nagar in Chennai, right? He's based in a town called Tiruvallur near Chennai, right? What happens is the shop has given him only shelf space, right? So he, let us say, he goes and displays 50 bunches of greens in the shelf space allotted, right? Let us say only 30 are sold, right? He has to take back the 20, right? The shopkeeper will not take the risk, right? The risk is completely upon the person supplying the greens, right? So whatever the risk, right? And again, the payment also, whatever he sells, again the payment will not be released again, released immediately. He'll take a month or so to release the payment, and whatever goes waste as goes waste, that also has to be factored into your pricing, right? This is one area where one avenue of marketing, and this is how it works. Most avenues of marketing, perishable commodities, work like this, right? Unless and otherwise you supply, you're able to dump it to a wholesaler where the entire risk is on him, right? There is quite a lot of risk involved in the marketing. Most people, I find, they don't factor it in at all. And most exotic crops you may not be able to sell in second tier cities itself. First tier cities, you're okay. If you're sitting in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, absolutely no issues at all. You can sell any amount of exotics that you produce, not an issue at all. But if you're, let us say, you're in any second tier city, right? Our Indian style of cooking does not adopt so much of, consume so much volume of exotics. So you will really find it difficult to market such produce, right? So definitely, when you are planning a project, you should really think about how you're going to sell your produce. Okay, so that is one thing that I wanted to point out, right? So I've actually listed out profitable regional crops that we have implemented, right? That includes some flowers as well. right? Some fruits and predominantly vegetables, right? So these are all very, very profitable projects that can be implemented. Of course, it is also region related, right? For example, in some regions, amaranth leaf, I'll give you the example of Andhra Pradesh, right? In Andhra Pradesh, Gongura is, I've forgotten the English name for it, right? Gongura is preferred over amaranth leaves. So if I cultivate amaranth leaves in Andhra Pradesh, I'm gone, right? But if you come to Tamil Nadu, amaranth leaf is the king, right? You can sell any quantity of amaranth leaves in Tamil Nadu. So similarly, right, when you choose a crop, you should also see whether it is appropriate to a particular region and crop it. So this list can all be implemented with naturally ventilated polyhouse. So huge costs saved in OPEX as well as CAPEX, right? So this I call it as the non-regional crops, or very often these are called the exotic crops. So all these crops, if at all you're not in a mountainous region, right, you will have to implement some sort of a cooling system, either a evaporative cooling system, or if it is a humid region, you'll have to go for a compressor based cooling system for growing these system. I've already pointed out the drawbacks from an Indian perspective in growing these plants. So what I will do is I will end the part one with this, right? In part two, I believe it is in a week or so, I will give you the OPEX, CAPEX, and the ROI analysis for some of the crops in both the lists, right? Both the regional, I'll give you the project technical specifications as well. And I will also give you the number tables where we will capture the CAPEX, OPEX, and the return on investment for these projects. I will also match it region wise. I will also try to indicate in which region that project is actually applicable, right? So that, let us plan that for the part two. So for part two, probably we'll have only tables. We will discuss table after table for the half an hour time given, right? So thank you, all of you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nagendhiran, for a very detailed presentation. Now we'll take up some questions. Okay.
If any questions, I'm here.
Yeah. So, yeah, how can soilless farming methods like hydroponics and aeroponics help optimize land use of increase crop yield in regions with limited arable land?
Yeah, that is one of the obvious advantages of vertical farming. And it is not the advantage of hydroponic farming. It is the advantage of vertical farming. So you have to implement a vertical system using hydroponics. It is easy to implement vertical systems using hydroponics. So hydroponics or aeroponics. And another very important point I want to make is I would not advise aeroponics in most regions in India. Unless and otherwise you have a stringent climate control, since your root stands exposed inside the chamber of an aeroponic system, right, the plant can get affected if your chamber gets warm, which is a very common possibility in most of the climate regions in India. I have seen so many, including mine, I have seen aeroponic farms failing where we have implemented it in regions where it was not supposed to be implemented. Right. So nowadays, what we do is, if there is a very stringent climate control, we implement aeroponic systems, or in mountainous regions, we implement aeroponic systems. But in risky situations, we do not do. And as I told you, you have to go with vertical systems for leveraging more produce in a smaller area. And that again depends upon crop, right? For example, turmeric is one crop where the multiplicity of produce is very high compared to a single level ground level produce area to area, comparing the same area in ground and the vertical farm. And again, greens give you huge output as compared to ground level farming. In tomatoes, again, in terms of number of plants, you may not have significant advantage in terms of in implementing a hydroponic system, but in terms of yield per plant, the hydroponic system can deliver multiple times the yield, at least 3 times the yield as compared to a plant grown in open in the soil. right? So that is case by case. Probably we will try to capture that information in the second part, so you'll understand it better with the numbers.
Okay. Next question. What are the recommended crops for soilless farming in India, and how can farmers ensure the nutritional quality and taste of these crops?
Yeah, see, one is, I think I've already listed it out in the slide. Probably I'll share it. I'll send it through email to Agri Information. If some of you want it, you can see the list. I've already listed out the crops that are feasible, that we have implemented and are profitable also. That's not an issue. What was the second part of the question?
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, recommended crops for soilless farming in India, and how can farmers ensure the nutritional quality and taste
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah. So generally, what we do is nowadays we implement sensors, right, which monitor both the pH and the total dissolved solids in your nutrient solution. So that is all that is to be maintained. The third important parameter is the temperature at the root zone. So all these three sensors play the vital role in ensuring that the plant grows well. So all that we need to do is, let us say it is a 90-day plant or a 30-day plant. For the entire 30 or 90 days, the pH should be in the ideal band, right? And the TDS also, for example, I'll give you an example. In general, for tomatoes, we do not exceed 1250 ppm for the total dissolved solids when we mix the nutrients, right? Let us say you mix it to 1600, then your plant is not going to grow well. Or if it goes below 800, again your tomato plant is not going to perform well. For lettuce, the maximum itself we'll keep at only 800, and the minimum probably will be around 400 or 450, so depending upon the plant. So all that comes into the IoT based automation, where these sensors will ensure that the parameters are accurate for the entire lifetime of your plant. You can also do it manually, but that is a bit difficult for a vertical farming system, because you'll have to sample it in multiple places and then analyze it and be sure about it. You'll have to do it repeatedly and so on. But if you have an automated system, it is monitored 24/7, right? We will have ideal number of samples so that the system is implemented foolproof.
Okay. And yeah, could you explain the economic benefits of soilless farming, such as reduced water usage and faster crop cycles, that could interest Indian farmers facing resource constraints?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely water is a benefit, right? Definitely you use less water, but again that is not being seen in detail, because most of the plains in India, we do not have soft water, right? The hilly regions and the mountainous regions, we have soft water, but most of the plains in India, we do not have soft water, and the TDS of the water itself is high. I'll give you an example. Let us say your water TDS is 600, right? And you're growing tomatoes. I already told you that the maximum dissolved solids that I can allow in the solution for tomatoes is 1250. So if your water is already loaded with 600 ppm of salts, right? Either I'll have to go with an RO system, remove all the unnecessary solids, and then mix up my plant nutrients. Or if I use the water as such, then 1250 minus 600. So the useful nutrients that I can add to that water will be limited only to 650 ppm. Right, so that actually restricts the performance of the what do you call it, plant. So when you consider the amount of water required, you have to look at your water quality, because if your water quality is really bad, your RO system is going to reject a lot of water, and you will only get I mean relatively less amount of water realized from what is from the input, right? So that also has to be factored in. Only after factoring that in, you will have effective calculation of water. But I would say if you have soft water, you will be using only 1/10 of the water that is used conventionally in a farm, right? So that is about the water, right? And other than that, the in terms of produce per plant, right, you will that again depends upon the plant, right? But definitely you will have a significant marginal increase in individual plant productivity. See, all these join together to give you the benefits. One is the amount of produce per plant as compared to conventional farming. That will increase because of streamlined management, optimal parameters and optimal nutrients and so on, optimal temperature and so on. You have higher output from the individual plant. In addition to that, you also have more number of plants in a given area, so that also increases the productivity. So all these together factor in to give you the multiplicity of produce as compared to conventional farming. And of course, labor is very less. These are all automated. So you virtually use labor only for harvesting and planting. Other than that, even the simple automation farms, they have everything. So there is no de-weeding, nothing is done. So you can very easily run these farms with very low running cost.
Okay. And next question, what strategies can farmers adopt to tackle potential challenges like nutrient management and disease control in soilless farming, and how do these strategies differ from traditional methods?
Okay, so one thing is, in order to prevent the disease in soilless farming systems, you'll have to maintain an optimal level of chlorine in your what do you call it, nutrition mix, right? So that actually prevents a lot of disease. Of course, you should not exceed 40 ppm of chlorine in your nutrition mix, but up to 40 ppm is allowed, right? And that 40 ppm plays a huge role in keeping your media or whatever, or your solution clean. So that is a very important factor in maintaining your substrate, whatever it may be, air or some neutral media or whatever. So that is a very important thing that you have to look into in order to prevent diseases. Other than that, if you're using a media or something, what we do is we train the client to test the media periodically, right? Very, very easy and simple tests which hardly take 1 or 2 minutes to test with common equipment. So that you have to test to see the health of your media, right? And what you need to do is, when you exceed certain parameters, I mean see certain excesses in parameters in your media, we also give a protocol for them to revive the media, right? So there are agents for neutralizing all unnecessary content in your media. So all that can be neutralized, it can be converted into insoluble ions. After that, it is rinsed off, it is sun dried, and it is as good as new, and it can be used again. So you can use your media on and on and on. And if it is a water-based system, the most important thing that you need to see is any contamination or deposits on the side walls of your growing units, right? So that is where the deposits and contamination can happen. So if at all we see such kind of a deposit or whatever, that you have to ensure that the unit is removed, cleaned properly, sterilized, and then used again. So that is the most important thing. Otherwise, you don't require much of maintenance. And another very interesting tip is that when you maintain the right temperature, most probably your system will not get contaminated, right? Whenever your system gets warm, that is most probably where you get your contaminations. And again, if you're keeping your system warm, your plant performance is also going to get affected. So ensure that the root zone is not warm at all, immaterial of what kind of a system you use.
Okay.
Did I leave out any part of the question? Did I answer that?
No, that was good. Yeah.
Okay.
So next question. Could you compare the environmental impacts of soil-based farming and soilless farming techniques, taking into accounts like water usage, chemical runoff, and greenhouse gas emissions?
Okay. See, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, if you're, as I stressed, if you're going with a system without a climate control, right, your carbon footprint is very low, right? So you're not disturbing the environment much. Most of the equipment that you buy, right, that can be used for a long time. So your carbon footprint is really, really very decent, right? Of course, because of our huge energy consumption, the climate controlled systems are, I would say, from an Indian perspective, are not good, right? Ma'am, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you compare the environmental impacts of soil-based farming and soil-less farming techniques, taking into account factors like water usage, chemical runoff, and greenhouse gas emissions?
Correct. Okay. So in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, you will not be doing anything unless and otherwise you go for organic farming, right? If you go for organic farming, then you start generating a lot of greenhouse gases. But in terms of our normal hydroponic cultivation, you don't generate too much of greenhouse gases. In terms of water runoff, I'll give you an example, right? Each human being on an average requires 2 grams of sodium chloride per day, right? So if it is in excess, you have some adverse effects. If it is less than that, also you have effects on your body. As long as it is 2 grams per day, your body completely assimilates the sodium chloride, right? So similarly, let us say a plant uses calcium nitrate or potassium nitrate or potassium chloride or whatever. These are essential salts for the plant, right? And if delivered in optimal quantities at the root, the plant will completely assimilate it and there won't be any residues. And in fact, your maintenance of your media, the maintenance interval of your media will be very, very long. So what happens is you will effectively end up with negligible salt runoff from your system. But if you're not managing your system properly, let us say you are not using proper quality of water, or you are using nutrition in excess, or you're not maintaining your media properly, right? Or your pH is not maintained properly. All this leaves salt residues in your system, right? So how the amount with which your system is mismanaged proportionally increases the salt runoff to the environment in a hydroponic system, right? If you compare a soil based a conventional farming, right, what happens is the system is to just distribute the salts on the surface. So not all the salts are absorbed by the plants. So the water, rain, as well as the irrigation water dissolves these salts, and that percolates into the soil, and finally it reaches our water bodies only. So there was a study which showed that from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, they could not find a single water source which was not contaminated with fertilizer. Right. So that is actually the direct impact of a lot of use of fertilizers in conventional farming. See, with respect to water, I think I've already explained it, right? If you compare soft water, you'll be using only 1/10 of the water as compared to conventional farming, or even lesser, right? If you compare hard water, hard and water laden with other salts, then I will not be able to give you an answer unless and otherwise I see your water report, right? So very often you may be in a situation where you might have to implement both a water softener as well as an RO system, right? So any unwanted content in a hydroponic system, the maximum allowable is 40 ppm. Let us say you're having calcium hardness. If you have a calcium hardness less than 40, you can still use the water even though it is hard. But if the calcium hardness is above 40 ppm, then you are not supposed to use the water. The problem you will face is that your pH will not be stable. But in that scenario, I feel the conventional farming is better, because whatever water you use, your conventional farming will not get affected that much. But your hydroponic farming definitely will be sensitive to lower quality of water. Ma'am?
Yeah. Okay. So just 2 to 3 questions. What are the
Yes, ma'am.
cutting edge technologies and innovations in soilless farming that Indian agriculture students should be aware of as they prepare to enter the field?
Okay, no, I think we are a little bit far away from implementing the cutting edge technologies. But when we talk about cutting edge technologies, the only part that is left now, as of now, whatever farm, let us say I implement a farm for a client, the only part that I am unable to do is the supervision by the client, right? What I always advise is the client has to go around the farm at least once a day and look for any sick plants or plants with some showing some deficiency symptoms, right? Or plants showing some fungal infection, or look for some pests or pests that might have come in, like grasshoppers or aphids or whatever. So this part of it, in general, in India, we do not have any automation systems. If you say cutting edge systems, there are nowadays high resolution cameras, right, which can zoom into any single plant, right? 4 or 5 cameras placed at vantage points can zoom into any particular plant, right? They can process the image and they can report as to whether any plant, let us say you have 1 lakh plants, the system is able to report, point out to one plant which is sick or deficient or having any disease symptoms, right? So that is one part. Second part is, we generally do not, in India, we do not implement robotic systems for planting and harvesting, but the systems are there, right? So those are cutting edge technologies that uh, we have not yet implemented in Indian farms. Some farms have implemented. And in terms of an agri graduate or whoever who wants to have knowledge about what do you call it, this field, right? You need to know how to design a vertical farming system, right? So in terms of vertical farming system, this vertical farming structure is dependent upon the voluminous size of the plant. So you have to look at the diameter of the plant, the height to which it will grow, the foliage of the plant. For example, a strawberry plant will not have much foliage, right? But compared to, let us say, a tomato plant will have more foliage, right? Chinese cabbage will be very heavy and large, right? A broccoli will have a wide canopy, so it might not, it will prevent light from falling to the lower decks. So all those considerations have to go into designing a vertical structure. We need to get from the client about what all crops he will be growing on the system, and based upon that we'll have to design the vertical system. Second thing is, the thing I stressed in the presentation today, it is about the climate control. You definitely need to understand what sort of a climate control system will work where, right? You'll have to analyze at least last 10 years of climate in a particular region, and for that climate you have to design the climate control system. You have to do a cold run for at least 1 month. See, I find it very difficult, because let us say a client is investing somewhere around 50 lakhs for a system, and I ask him to do a cold run for 1 month, he gets irritated, right? But I'll tell you, that is how you can actually do it, because you have to ensure that the environment, the ambience that we have created inside the greenhouse is perfectly suited for the plant. We have to confirm that and then only go for the planting. If the client is in a hurry and if he goes, rushes into the planting, later on he might find out that that one crop may get damaged, and we might have to retune the system. Unfortunately, most people do not have the patience for all these things, but professionally I would implement it in that way, right? We'll have to take the time, so that in the long run you have no issues at all with your system. And of course, you also have to learn your IoT path. I do my own programming, and I feel that is very effective, because I have complete understanding of the farm I implement, and I do the software, and I give the instructions as to how the farm should work. If I source the software from a third party, then I do have issues, because he may not really understand what I am looking for in the farm, and he may end up making a mistake. So those are things that you need to learn. And of course, you need to understand your greenhouse. You need to understand how much of ventilation to be given, what should be the ratio of the polyfilm to the insect net. So all that you need to understand also. Let us say you're going for implementing a naturally ventilated polyhouse, you will have to understand all that. So these are the main areas where your understanding is required. And I think it'll be quite some time before we go and get the cutting edge technology implemented in Indian scenario. And one more thing I might have missed is the grow lighting. You need to understand how grow lighting works, what spectrum of light works for which plant, what spectrum of light works for which stage of plant, right? All that needs to be understood. So, we give a different spectrum for leafing stage, we give a different spectrum for flowering stage, we give a different spectrum for fruiting stage, right? In some cases, we go for full spectrum lighting. So that also, so you can read up on all these things. Quite a lot of material is available over the net. The only thing is you need to have the patience to read up on all this. Once you understand that, you're good. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. I'll take up the last question. How can agri startups collaborate with research institutions farmers and the government to create conducive ecosystem for the widespread adoption of soilless farming in India?
I'll give you the practical answer, right? If at all you need someone to consider what you're proposing to be important, you have to create a model first. Whatever the size of it, you have to create a model, whatever you're proposing. Let us say you are proposing something related to image processing and maintaining your plants, right? Or you might go into robotics implementation for a vertical hydroponic farm, right? So anything like this, or let us say you're talking about implementation of IoT or sensor modes and so on, right? First and foremost, what you need to do is you have to implement a reasonably sized. It can be small, but it should be reasonably sized. It cannot be a very miniature model. So that has to be implemented. Unless and otherwise, you have something like that, or you have to publish it. These are the two options. Some really standard journal should publish your work. So either of these two only will connect you to research agencies. Otherwise, so if you just pitch an idea on paper, they may not take you seriously at all. So these two things. Third thing is, whatever you do, you can even register it as a patent and then approach the research agencies. Then also you'll be taken seriously. That is that part. In terms of farmers in India, see, I have very few farmers as my customers. I mean the conventional farmers, because still these systems are not affordable for the normal farmer, right? My dream is to make it affordable, but right now I'm unable to. Right. So for the farmer, we can start suggesting very simple systems which are extremely cost effective. Right. I've been thinking long term about a model where we can give the bill of quantities of material. The farmer can purchase it himself. We just train him to put it together by himself. I was also thinking of vertical farms without greenhouses, where he gets the vertical advantage, but he does the same maintenance as he does in a ground level farm. Still, he stands to gain, but he invests less. So all these have been considerations, and all these are very important considerations from an Indian perspective. And I think we need to do it for the farmers. So that is how you can connect to them. And very often you also face this. You will be ridiculed by the farmers because they are very innocent people who strongly believe that whatever they've been practicing for many years is right. So when you propose a new idea, it may, however optimal it may be, initially you will face ridicule, right? So you'll have to prove it to them for them to take it, or for them to work along with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Nagendhiran, I don't see any more questions from our participants. So now we have come to end of question round. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, we like to thank you for a very interesting presentation and answering all the questions in depth. And we also like to thank all the participants for joining this meeting. The meeting will now be closed, and we will meet again in the next month on around same time.
Yeah, please do remind me, ma'am, for the meeting.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.